You have come here to listen, not merely with your ears, but with the trembling strings of your inner being. What unfolds before you is not confined to intellect or theory. It descends deeper into the hidden corridors of the psyche, where shadows walk in silence, where light itself trembles upon the edge of revelation. Here, suffering is not an obstacle to be conquered, but a threshold, a gate through which one must pass to truly awaken. I want to speak to you as though you stand before me now, each of you carrying in your heart a secret, unspoken story of endurance, the quiet ache of having borne another's darkness, the silent courage of surviving what seemed unspeakable. There is a strange alchemy that occurs when an empath walks through the labyrinth of the narcissist, and somehow, against all odds, emerges alive. Many believe survival is the final chapter of pain. But what if survival is not an ending at all, but only the beginning of something far more profound? Survival marks merely the threshold, the fragile edge of what remains after one has absorbed the poison. For when one has been hollowed out by another's insatiable hunger, what is left is not merely a broken vessel, but a space where something new can be born. Out of ashes, a new form stirs a new archetype waiting to rise. And so the question that hovers before us, the one we must face together, is this: who does the empath become after such a descent? After this crucifixion of the soul, who emerges on the other side? To begin to answer, we must first understand what it truly means to be an empath in the Jungian sense. Not simply one who feels too much, not merely someone with fragile emotional skin, but one chosen by the unconscious itself. A vessel for projection, for transference, for the unspoken and unclaimed shadows of others. The empath is often born within an atmosphere of psychic imbalance. From the very beginning, even as a child, they attune themselves to the shifting moods of parents, to the invisible tremors within the household, to the unuttered anxieties that saturate the air like invisible mist. Their sensitivity becomes a survival strategy, a way to regulate chaos, to restore order by becoming the mirror that reflects what others dare not face. And so, when the narcissist appears in their life, it is never by chance. It is the inevitable magnetism of archetypes, ancient forces drawing each other into a dance as old as time. The narcissist becomes the embodiment of shadow denied, the mask that must consume others to maintain its fragile, godlike illusion. And the empath, by nature, becomes the one who holds, who absorbs, who swallows what the narcissist refuses to admit. But here lies the crucible, the burning center of the transformation. To absorb the narcissist's darkness is no small matter. It is to let a venom not your own seep into your bloodstream, to carry within you the echo of a hunger that was never yours. It is to feel guilt that was never yours, guilt that had been projected upon you like a stain that could not be washed away. It is to carry shame that did not belong to you, and rage that was planted deep within your chest like an alien seed. Foreign, burning, alive. This absorption can feel like a kind of death, a quiet suffocation beneath the weight of another's chaos. The empath begins to lose their sense of self, their reflection growing blurred, their identity dissolving in confusion. They start to question their own sanity, trapped within the hall of mirrors, where every reflection lies, where the narcissist insists, again and again, that reality is only what the mask proclaims it to be. But I tell you, within that very dissolution, within that breaking of all familiar boundaries, something archetypal begins to stir. It is not merely collapse, it is initiation. The journey of the wounded healer begins here, the shamanic descent into the underworld, the sacred dismemberment of the ego, so that the deeper soul may awaken to its hidden vocation. When you survive such an ordeal, you are not who you were before. The empath who walks out of the labyrinth is not the same empath who first entered its twisting corridors. There has been a death and a rebirth. You have carried the shadow of another across the threshold of your being. You have wrestled with the poison that sought to consume you, and if you stand here, still breathing, still feeling, then you have not been destroyed, but transformed. The unconscious that demanded this trial has also placed within you the seed of metamorphosis. For what is survival, if not a form of sacred alchemy? The lead of suffering, the mercury of confusion, the sulfur of rage, all are fused together in the hidden furnace of the psyche until something new emerges. Gold, pure, incorruptible, and forged by pain. And so we ask again, as if the question itself were a mirror, who do you become? You become the one who knows darkness not as abstraction, but as intimacy. You become the one who no longer trembles before the abyss, for you have dwelt within it and found that it, too, holds a kind of truth. You become the one whose compassion is no longer naive, whose light is no longer unguarded, but whose very soul now carries the weight, the gravitas, of one who has walked among devils and returned with eyes that see beyond masks. To bring this truth closer, let me illustrate it with a dream. Imagine a woman who dreams she stands in a vast banquet hall, its tables heavy with food, its golden chalices overflowing with wine. The room glows with laughter and music, yet something within her hesitates. When she finally sits to eat, the food turns to ashes in her mouth, and the wine, dark and glistening, becomes blood. She looks around in horror. Every guest at the table wears a mask, smiling, laughing, performing joy. But behind those masks lie hollow sockets, gnashing teeth. And then she realizes she, too, is wearing a mask. Panic surges through her as she rips it from her face and screams. But when she looks down into the reflection in her chalice, she sees that her face has changed. It is luminous now, scarred, but radiant. She wakes trembling, her heart pounding with the knowledge that she has glimpsed some terrible and beautiful truth. This dream is the psyche's way of revealing what it truly means to survive the banquet of the narcissist, to eat the ashes of illusion, to taste the bitterness of manipulation, to tear away the mask and discover that the face beneath, though marked by pain, shines with an authenticity that cannot be faked. Yet this transformation does not come without a cost. Let no one deceive you into thinking that to emerge from the grip of the narcissist is to emerge untouched. There are wounds, and those wounds will ache. You may carry with you a constant sense of hypervigilance, a quiet distrust that lingers in the corners of your mind like a shadow that refuses to leave. The echo of the narcissist's voice may still whisper in the dim recesses of your thoughts, telling you what to fear, what to doubt, what to remember. Yet those very wounds, those invisible scars, are not merely remnants of pain. They are inscriptions, symbols carved deep into your being. They speak of where you have walked and what you have survived. They are the markings of initiation, the proof that you have endured the passage. For survival is not the avoidance of pain. It is the sacred art of bearing it until its hidden meaning slowly begins to emerge. The empath who survives such darkness becomes more than a survivor. They become a keeper of knowledge, a silent carrier of shadow wisdom. You are no longer merely sensitive. You are wise. You have learned to recognize the faint scent of deception long before it reaches your door. You know the bitter taste of false love, the way manipulation drifts in the air like smoke before the fire reveals itself. And though this knowing has come at great cost, make no mistake, it is a rare and potent gift, earned through the alchemy of suffering. And so, you may ask, why must it be this way? Why must the empath walk through the abyss of the narcissist in order to awaken? The answer lies within the deep laws of the unconscious, which always demand balance. The narcissist, unable to bear the weight of their own shadow, projects it outward, and that shadow must find a vessel. The empath, shaped since childhood to carry what was never theirs, becomes that vessel, that living container of another's denied darkness. But the unconscious, in its mysterious mercy, does not abandon them there. It pushes them to the breaking point, to the edge of collapse, where the poison can no longer be endured. And in that moment, when everything seems to fall apart, when identity itself shatters like glass, the psyche finds an opening, a chance to reorganize on a deeper level. This is the essence of individuation, the dangerous yet sacred process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who the world demanded you to be. It is a perilous path, and many do not emerge unchanged. Yet those who do survive come forth with a clarity and a strength unknown to those who have never faced such darkness within or without. There's a passage in the old alchemical texts that speaks of negrito the blackening. It is the stage where everything begins to dissolve, where the matter rots, where light itself disappears into shadow. And yet, it is precisely in that decay that the seed of transformation is sown. The empath who has absorbed the narcissist's darkness must enter their own negrito. They feel destroyed, emptied, stripped of worth, as though life itself has abandoned them. But if they endure, if they refuse to sink into illusion or despair, then from that black soil something miraculous stirs. The white rose begins to bloom. And so, who does the empath become? They become the alchemist of their own suffering. They are no longer merely open, they are discerning. They carry within them not only empathy, but the wisdom of boundaries. They have learned that the soul must never again be given away cheaply, for they know too well the cost of such sacrifice. Through paradox, they become more whole forged by what once tried to break them. Now listen carefully, for what follows is a warning wrapped in truth. The empath, having survived such devastation, may be tempted to harden their heart entirely, to seal it shut, to vow silently, "Never again will I feel. Never again will I love. Never again will I open." And this, though deeply human, is the danger that remains. It is understandable. It is the psyche's way of protecting itself after devastation, a natural shield that rises from the ruins of pain. The heart closes, the mind withdraws, and silence becomes a kind of safety. Yet, if this closing becomes permanent, if it hardens into habit, then the sacred alchemy remains incomplete. To heal is not to become stone, for stone does not feel, and therefore it cannot transform. To heal is to become gold, to allow the light of awareness to flow again through what was once shattered. To become stone is merely to take on another mask, another defense, another form of hiding. And the unconscious, relentless in its purpose, will one day tear that mask away. For the soul will not be content with safety when it was born for wholeness. True survival means, ultimately, to reopen. But this time, not as a lamb led to slaughter, but as a lion who knows its own strength. You will still feel deeply, for that is your nature, but you will no longer be devoured by those feelings. You will still love, but love will no longer mean losing yourself. You will still shine, but your light will no longer be offered to those who come only to drain it. You will know, instinctively, the difference between giving and surrendering, between compassion and self-erasure. This is the paradox of the empath who has survived. Your heart, once fragile, now grows larger, but it is also sharper, more discerning. You are both tender and fierce, capable of gentleness without losing your edge. Consider again the archetype of the wounded healer, the one who, having been wounded in body or soul, becomes capable of guiding others through the very darkness they once endured. Yet this does not mean you will seek out narcissists in order to save them. That is the old pattern, the cycle of endless sacrifice, the illusion of redemption through suffering. No, the healed empath heals simply by being, by embodying authenticity, by carrying a light that is no longer naive, but aware. You become a mirror in which others glimpse their own potential for wholeness. You may guide, you may comfort, you may teach, but you will no longer allow yourself to be consumed in the process. And in this way, the narcissist, paradoxically, and perhaps unwillingly, has served your individuation. Their darkness became the crucible that forced you into the depths, where you discovered your own strength. It is, without question, a brutal gift, yet a gift nonetheless. For through that trial, you have been remade. And so I say to you, if you have absorbed the narcissist's darkness and lived to tell the tale, then you are no longer merely empath. You are something beyond that fragile word. You are one who has died and been reborn. One who has carried another's shadow and returned from the abyss. One who has looked behind the mask and refused to become a mask yourself. You are no longer defined by what was done to you, but by what you have become through it, by the fire that transformed you rather than consumed you. And what you have become is nothing less than a soul awakened to its own archetypal power. For when we speak of becoming after survival, we must also speak of integration. For it is not enough merely to escape the labyrinth. One must carry out the treasure hidden in its depths. The empath who survives the narcissist stands now at a crossroads, one path leading back into denial, where the story is buried deep in the unconscious and festers. The other, leading toward confrontation, courage, and transformation. Integration demands that you face the shadow, not only the narcissist's shadow, but your own. For what was it in you that allowed the narcissist to enter, to feed, to remain? What opened the door? Was it love, that yearning to heal what seemed broken in another? Was it the fear of abandonment, the old wound that whispers, "If I give enough, they will stay"? Or was it the secret hunger to feel indispensable, to be the savior, to be the one who could redeem what no one else could? These questions must be faced honestly, for if they are denied, the cycle repeats itself in endless disguise. This is not condemnation. It is illumination. To bring these hidden motives into the light is not to shame yourself, but to liberate yourself. You see, the empath's greatest danger is not only the narcissist outside, but the unconscious narcissist within that subtle inner voice that thrives on sacrifice, because it grants a sense of worth, the part that confuses being needed with being loved, the part that longs to be chosen even at the cost of the soul. To look at this inner dynamic is not betrayal of your compassion. It is the highest act of self-awareness. When this is seen, when it is finally admitted, without denial or self-hatred, then the transformation is complete. For you no longer serve as an unconscious participant in the old drama, but as a conscious actor who chooses differently. Think for a moment of the myth of Persephone. She was taken into the underworld by Hades, drawn into the depths where the living seldom return. In that darkness, she eats the pomegranate seeds, an act that binds her forever to both realms. She cannot return to the upper world unchanged, for she now belongs partly to the dark and partly to the light. So too with the empath who has eaten of the narcissist's fruit. You can never return to innocence, nor should you wish to. That is not a loss, it is a sacred initiation. You will forever carry within you the memory of the underworld, the knowledge of manipulation, the echo of false promises, the taste of ashes in your mouth. Yet this remembrance is not a curse, it is a form of wisdom. For this does not mean you are condemned to despair. On the contrary, like Persephone, you become a mediator between worlds. You learn to walk between the light and the dark, with balance and grace. You can descend into the shadow of another without losing yourself there. And you can ascend again into the light, now with greater depth and authenticity. You are no longer naive about evil, yet you are no longer consumed by it. You have learned that both darkness and light are teachers. This delicate balance is the true mark of maturity, the unmistakable sign of individuation. To make this clearer, imagine another vision. A man dreams that he is walking through a dense forest at night. The air is thick with mist, and in his trembling hand he holds a lantern. Its faint flame flickers, barely lighting the ground before him. From the shadows, he hears voices, whispering, accusing, mocking, luring him deeper into confusion. His heart races, but he continues forward. Suddenly, he stumbles into a small clearing. There, in the center, stands a mirror. Tall, upright, silent. He approaches and peers into it, only to see his reflection bound in heavy chains. Fear grips him, yet when he reaches out and touches the surface of the mirror, the chains on his reflection dissolve. Then, as he watches in awe, the reflection's eyes begin to burn with fire, fierce, alive, unafraid. He awakens with a pounding heart, knowing he has just encountered a part of himself he had long refused to see. This dream, like the ordeal of surviving the narcissist, reveals the necessity of facing both bondage and freedom, both weakness and strength. The empath who has been bound by chains of guilt and self-doubt discovers, through survival, the awakening of something fierce within, a fire that had always been there, waiting beneath the surface to be seen. The mirror shows both captivity and liberation. It reflects not only what binds you, but also what waits to be set free. And so the question arises, which will you choose to embody? Which reflection will you claim as your truth? Now, we must pause here and look deeply into what it means to carry darkness without allowing it to define you. The narcissist's poison does not simply disappear when the relationship ends. It lingers, invisible but potent, like smoke that clings to the lungs long after the fire has gone out. There will be moments, sudden, unguarded, when you might still hear their voice echoing in your mind, whispering accusations, belittling your worth, insisting that you were never enough. But hear this clearly. These echoes are not signs of failure. They are the remnants of internalized projection, the last shadows of someone else's illusion. Still trying to find form within you. The task is not to silence these voices by force, but to face them with the quiet authority of your awakened self. When the echo says, "You are worthless," you do not argue. You answer with truth. "I have survived. Therefore, I am more than you ever saw." When the echo hisses, "You will never be loved," you reply, "I have learned to love myself. Therefore, I no longer hunger for your counterfeit affection." This dialogue within, this sacred confrontation, is the living continuation of individuation. You are reclaiming the lost territory of your soul, piece by piece, word by word, breath by breath, until the inner landscape no longer belongs to the ghost of the narcissist, but to you. Do not be deceived, however, into believing that this process comes quickly or cleanly. The unconscious does not move at the impatient pace of the ego's desire for resolution. Healing is not a straight ascent. It arrives in waves, sometimes soft and merciful, sometimes fierce, like a storm that drags you back into sorrow just when you thought you were free. And yet, even in those tempests, remember, you are not who you once were. You may feel the old pain return, but you are no longer the same vessel that first held it. You have been cracked open, and through those cracks, light has entered. It filters through your wounds, illuminating what was once hidden in shadow. You are wiser now, more discerning, less willing to betray yourself for another's illusion. This, I tell you, is no small victory. For the narcissist thrives only where illusion survives. The moment you refuse to sustain that illusion, their power dissolves like mist at dawn. You become untouchable, not because you have become invulnerable, but because you have awakened. Awareness itself becomes your armor. And so, what then is the destiny of the empath who has survived? It is not merely to live free of narcissists. That would be too narrow, too shallow a goal for a soul that has journeyed through such depths. Your destiny is far greater. To become a bearer of light forged in darkness, to carry within you a compassion that does not confuse itself with martyrdom. To walk among others as a living reminder that suffering, when faced rather than fled, can become transformation. You are, in truth, a symbol living among symbols. Others who are still entangled in the same shadows will sense something in you, even if they cannot name it. They will feel your presence as both comfort and challenge. Comfort, because you understand their pain without judgment. Challenge, because your very being exposes their illusions. Simply by existing, you become a mirror that reflects not what others wish to see, but what is true. This is the paradoxical role of the survivor, to carry within you both balm and sword, to heal and to divide, to comfort and to confront, to reveal truth merely by existing as one who has seen and endured. The survivor becomes a living testimony that light can emerge from devastation. Let us, then, consider the ancient archetype of the phoenix rising from ashes. This image has become so familiar that its power often feels dulled, its meaning reduced to cliché. And yet, if you meditate on it deeply, you realize it is not a mere metaphor at all. The empath's old self truly burns away in the fire of the narcissist's darkness. What turns to ash is not simply innocence. It is the entire identity that once believed love must mean endless giving, that empathy required self-erasure, that compassion demanded self-sacrifice. Those beliefs do not survive the fire. Out of those ashes rises a being transformed, one who knows their worth, who carries fire in their wings, who can now soar above manipulation rather than sink beneath it. But unlike the mythic phoenix who rises alone, this rebirth is not solitary. It carries within it a mission, a silent vow. You are reborn not merely for yourself, but for the collective, for the unseen heart still trapped in darkness. For the unconscious of humanity demands witnesses, and you become such a witness. Even without words, your very presence testifies that survival is possible, that the soul can descend into shadow, endure, and yet be remade. You become living proof that darkness, faced with courage, becomes the raw material of transformation. And after such an awakening, you may find that your perception of reality itself has shifted. What once appeared solid now reveals itself as layers of mask and archetype. You begin to see more clearly the games people play, the personas they adopt, the projections they cast upon others. And yes, there will be moments when this vision feels like alienation. For once you have seen behind the curtain, it is impossible to forget the machinery that moves the play. But even this sense of distance is, paradoxically, a gift. It frees you from the illusions that once ensnared you. You are no longer seduced by charm, nor deceived by flattery, nor trapped in guilt masquerading as love. You stand now outside the collective hypnosis, awake among the sleepwalkers. It can be lonely, painfully so at times. Yet this solitude is also the first breath of genuine freedom. For freedom is not merely the absence of chains, it is the presence of awareness. It is the ability to see without illusion and still choose compassion. I must emphasize again, do not despise what you have endured. Though it was cruel, though it nearly shattered you, it also awakened capacities that could never have been born otherwise. The narcissist, in their relentless hunger, served as the blacksmith's hammer striking the metal of your soul. Yes, it hurt. It scarred. But it also forged you into something unbreakable. Now, you are not a vessel of fragility, but of tempered strength. Your empathy has not died. It has deepened. You still feel, but you feel with eyes open. You still love, but your love carries discernment. You still give, but you no longer mistake giving for disappearing. This is the alchemy of survival, the sacred chemistry of turning wounds into wisdom. And yet, there will be moments, I know, when you mourn the self you once were. You may miss the innocence, the unguarded openness, the purity of trust. But innocence is not the highest good wholeness is, and wholeness is not pure light, but the union of both light and shadow intertwined in sacred tension. The empath who has survived carries this union within them, walking between worlds that once seemed opposed. They are no longer angel nor victim, no longer defined by extremes of innocence or pain. They are a whole human being now, fierce and tender, luminous and scarred, radiant yet rooted. They walk the earth as a living paradox, and in that paradox lies the secret of true individuation. For wholeness is not perfection, it is the harmony of contradictions held without denial. So I say to you now, you are not merely survivors. You are initiates, souls who have passed through a trial that stripped you bare of illusion and identity alike. What remains is not less than before, but infinitely more. The essence has been distilled. Do not diminish yourself by whispering, "I am broken." Instead, let your voice declare, "I have been remade." Do not cling to bitterness, even though it tempts like a familiar comfort, for bitterness turns living wounds into fossils. It calcifies the spirit until nothing new can grow. Instead, hold your wound as something sacred, the very place where the divine has entered you. For it is not in our perfection, but in our fractures, that the soul reveals its truest face. And you, empath, who has endured and survived, now carry that revelation within you like an inner flame. When the empath rises from the ashes of survival, there comes a strange, haunting silence. It is the silence after the storm, the stillness when thunder fades, when the rain has ceased, and the trembling earth remembers the violence that shaped it. Many mistake this silence for emptiness, for numbness, for death of feeling. But it is not emptiness. It is the psyche's way of resetting itself, of preparing for a new orientation. In that deep, echoing quiet, you may feel lost, unsure of who you are now that the old roles have dissolved. The identity that once found meaning in giving endlessly, in rescuing, in absorbing another's need, has fallen away. And so you may ask with trembling honesty, who am I now? If not the savior, if not the sufferer, then who remains? This question is not despair. It is the beginning of a deeper journey. For to lose the old answer is not to be empty. It is to be open. The unconscious has carved a vast, quiet space within you, and in that sacred hollow, something new begins to stir. It waits, patient, ancient, for a new image to take shape. An image not dictated by the narcissist, nor by the patterns of your childhood conditioning, but by the self itself, the archetype of wholeness that has been guiding you all along, even through the darkness you thought would consume you. Do you see now how necessary the collapse truly was? Without it, you would still be circling within illusions, still mistaking sacrifice for love, still confusing empathy with destiny, still equating surrender with virtue. The narcissist's shadow forced you into the crucible where every falsehood burned away. And now, within this silence, the self begins to whisper. It does not shout. It comes gently, almost imperceptibly, through dreams, through symbols, through sudden insights that rise like sunlight through fog. Perhaps you dream of walking through a ruined city where all is gray and broken, until you notice a single flower blooming between the stones. Perhaps you dream of a child offering you a key, though you do not yet know which door it opens. Perhaps you find yourself drawn to solitude, to the stillness of forests, to the quiet spaces where your own breath becomes your teacher, and your heartbeat sounds like the earth remembering itself. All of these are signs that your psyche is reorganizing, that the empath has ceased to be merely a vessel for others, and has become instead a seeker of their own inner truth. And it is here, at this very threshold, that the archetype of the hero enters. You may not think of yourself as a hero, for your past was not one of conquest, but of endurance. Yet endurance itself is a form of quiet heroism, a strength forged in silence. To survive when another has fed upon your light, to keep breathing when your soul has been poisoned, when every truth inside you was twisted and every boundary shattered. This too is courage. It may not shine in armor, but it glows beneath the scars. This is a form of heroism as profound as any mythic battle told in song or scripture. But unlike the heroes of old, who slayed dragons with swords of steel, your dragon could not be slain. It was not an external beast that could be struck down. It was both within and without. It lived in the narcissist who drained you, but also in the corners of your own shadow, whispering doubt, guilt, and longing. Your task wasn't to kill, but to endure, to face the fire without retreating, to stay present until transformation began to stir from within. And now, having endured what many could not, you carry within you the sacred boon the hero always brings back from the underworld. Knowledge. Knowledge of darkness. Knowledge of illusion. Knowledge of how resilient the human spirit truly is when stripped of all false light. You have touched despair and found within it a strange kind of wisdom, the understanding that what breaks you can also awaken you. And like every true hero, you are called to use this knowledge not only for yourself, but for others who are still wandering in the dark. The hero is never reborn for their own sake alone. They return to the village carrying fire, carrying medicine, carrying vision. They return so that others might remember the way home. But here I must caution you. The empath who has survived is vulnerable to a new and subtle temptation, the temptation to define themselves solely by their suffering, to cling to the story of pain as though it were the last proof of identity. You may find yourself whispering, "This is who I am," the one who was broken and survived. Yet identity, built only upon survival, is still incomplete. It is a beginning, not an ending. You must go beyond survival into becoming. Survival is the seed. Becoming is the flower that grows from it. If you stop at survival, you risk circling endlessly around your wound, feeding it instead of freeing it. Bitterness may begin to crystallize where tenderness once was. But if you move into becoming, if you allow the wound to be transfigured, then that pain becomes strength, that fracture becomes compassion, that darkness becomes vision. The narcissist once sought to reduce you to a hollow reflection of their emptiness. Survival ensured that didn't happen. Now it is your task to ensure that survival itself does not become a prison. Do not merely survive, become. And what does this becoming look like? It may not be grand, or dramatic, or even visible to the world. Sometimes it looks like speaking truth where once you were silent, letting your voice tremble but not falter. Sometimes it looks like saying no, where once you could only say yes. It might be as subtle as noticing manipulation flicker in a glance and refusing to be pulled back into its gravity. Every act of authenticity, every small moment of loyalty to yourself, every time you choose to stay awake instead of slipping into old patterns, these are the quiet miracles of your becoming. Over time, these small acts weave together like golden threads into a tapestry of transformation. You become someone who no longer betrays themselves for the sake of peace, who no longer confuses love with losing oneself. You become someone who can love without dissolving, who can feel without being consumed, who can give without disappearing into the hunger of another. You become, at last, a soul that belongs wholly to itself, a being who knows that compassion and self-respect are not opposites, but reflections of the same light. And in this revelation, the unconscious delights, for it loves nothing more than a paradox fulfilled. And so it is with you. Having absorbed darkness, you now radiate a light that is entirely different from before. It is no longer the untouched, innocent light of the unscarred empath, but the tempered, refined glow of one who has walked through shadow and returned. Before, your light was soft, gentle, and diffuse, so easily consumed by those who sought to drain it for their own need. But now, your light cuts through the fog. It no longer pleads to be seen. It stands on its own, steady and unafraid. This new light is sharper, more defined, more sovereign. It does not shimmer for approval. It illuminates truth, a light that reveals illusions, exposing falsehoods without being extinguished by them. Others may feel it in complex ways, comfort and unease, warmth and challenge. For your very presence now carries a quiet demand for authenticity. Those who wish to remain asleep will resist you. Those who long for truth will be drawn to you as if by instinct. And this, whether you realize it or not, is part of your destiny. For the empath who has survived carries not only their own transformation, but also the potential awakening of others. You have become a living mirror. Your being reflects both the beauty and the cost of consciousness itself. Imagine now another dream. A woman dreams she is walking down a lonely path under a silver moon, carrying a heavy sack filled with stones. Each step is agony, each breath a labor. The weight pulls at her shoulders until at last she collapses, the sack bursting open upon the ground. The stones scatter in every direction, and she lies there trembling, gasping for air. But as she lifts her eyes to the earth before her, she notices something. Some of the stones are shining. In the pale moonlight, they gleam like jewels. And then comes the realization. She has been carrying treasure all along. What she thought was only burden was in truth the container of hidden gifts. This is the deeper truth of your survival. You believed you were carrying only pain, shame, guilt. Yet hidden within these very weights were jewels, resilience, discernment, empathy refined into wisdom. You did not lose your light. You forged it in the furnace of endurance. Now that the sack has spilled open, your task is clear: to claim what was always yours, to gather those jewels from the dust, to polish them, to wear them not as trophies, but as sacred emblems of what you have endured. Do not discard them in disgust, for they were never your enemy. They are the gifts born of your suffering, the luminous rewards hidden within the shadow's weight. And the deeper truth is this: who you have become after absorbing the narcissist's darkness is no longer merely an empath. You have become something far more profound, an oracle of sorts, one who sees beyond appearances, who perceives the subtle play of forces beneath the surface of human interaction. You have developed a sixth sense, a kind of inner sight for deception and truth alike. You can feel when something does not align. Sense when the shadow stirs in another. Notice when the mask begins to slip and the projection starts to fall. This is not paranoia. It is perception. It is what happens when one has lived among masks and has learned, through necessity, to distinguish between what is false and what is real. Such perception can be isolating, for few dare to see so deeply, but it is also sacred, for it allows you to serve others in a way that words alone cannot. You become a quiet guide for those still trapped in illusion, not by preaching, not by forcing truth upon them, but simply by embodying it. You are the living proof that survival can become transformation, that darkness can birth wisdom, that even the most poisoned love can give rise to awakening. And so, by your very existence, you remind others, without a single command, that it is possible to walk through fire and emerge not burned, but reborn. The empath who has survived has crossed the threshold into a new mode of being, one that carries both the fragrance of eternity and the weight of human fragility. To describe this state is difficult, for language itself falters before mystery. How can words contain what the soul has endured? Yet we must try, because the psyche demands expression of its own experience. What is left unspoken risks remaining unformed within, like an unfinished dream. When you survive the narcissist, you are not simply healing. You are shaping the ineffable into meaning. You have confronted evil, not evil as an abstract concept or moral lesson, but as an intimate and personal reality. You have seen how a mask can devour, how charm can conceal cruelty, how love itself can be twisted into a weapon. You have felt the chilling hollowness that resides in those who refuse to face their own shadow, the abyss that stares back from behind their eyes. To stand before that abyss and not collapse, to keep your humanity intact while witnessing the inhuman, is no small thing. It is nothing less than a spiritual initiation. You have looked directly into the heart of the collective shadow. For the narcissist is not merely a single person, but a living embodiment of what society itself represses: the hunger for domination, the terror of vulnerability, the refusal to face truth. To survive such an encounter is to carry within you a piece of the collective work of humankind. You have witnessed what most people would rather deny, and in seeing it clearly, you have become a bearer of forbidden knowledge. This knowledge is not to be buried or forgotten. It is sacred, costly, and necessary. It becomes the foundation of your transformation. But transformation alone is not the end. The deeper work is integration. To integrate means to weave the darkness you have faced into the living fabric of your being, not as poison, but as wisdom. You no longer say, "That was not me." Instead, you say, "It touched me, but it did not define me. It scarred me, yes, but those scars are now symbols of meaning." This shift of perspective marks the difference between a wound that festers and a wound that teaches. And so, your wounds matter profoundly. They are not errors to be erased, but inscriptions carved by the unconscious itself, ancient hieroglyphs that tell the story of descent and return. They testify that you have walked through the valley of shadow and emerged carrying the quiet authority of experience. Authority, not in the sense of control over others, but as authenticity, the authority of one who has lived what others only theorize. Others may debate your words, question your insights, even dismiss your path, but they cannot argue with your being. You embody survival, and that embodiment alone is a form of living testimony. It is here that we find the great paradox of your destiny. You are no longer merely empath, for the naive empathy that once defined you has died in the crucible of fire. You are no longer merely survivor either, for survival without awakening is incomplete. You have become something far more complex, more ambiguous, more powerful, more dangerous, and yes, more holy. You are the wounded healer who carries light within the scar, but you are also the shadow knower, the one who has walked through both night and day and learned to hold them as equals. You are a living reminder that humanity cannot be neatly divided into victims and perpetrators, light and shadow, innocence and evil. You know now that all these dwell within the human psyche, interwoven and inseparable. You have met them in others, and you have met them in yourself. And because you know this truth, you can no longer be deceived by appearances. You see beneath the surface of faces, beneath the practiced smiles and polite performances. You perceive the archetypes moving behind words, the energies of shadow and light flowing through conversations, relationships, and even societies themselves. This heightened vision is both gift and burden, for it separates you from the comforting illusions that sustain the many. Yet in the same breath, it grants you the rarest of freedoms, the freedom that belongs only to those who see truly. Though it isolates, it also liberates. At this stage, you may feel estranged, as if you have stepped out of a shared dream that others are still asleep within. You may walk through the world and notice what others do not see. You observe, often in silence, how easily people fall under the spell of charisma, how they surrender their discernment to charm, how they worship images and mistake illusion for truth. You witness how they offer their souls to appearances, unaware of what they are sacrificing. And sometimes, this vision can feel like a burden. You may feel weary, for you can no longer return to that lost innocence, the innocence of unseeing. Yet I tell you, do not despair, for your estrangement is not a curse, it is your vocation. You are no longer meant to fit into the old patterns that once imprisoned you. You are meant to reveal new possibilities of being. You have become a seed of individuation in a collective that craves conformity. You are a whisper of authenticity in a chorus of masks, a quiet rebellion against the sleep of the many. Few will understand you, for truth rarely finds easy acceptance. But take heart. Those who are ready will recognize you, and when they do, they will see in your scars the map of their own survival. Your presence will remind them that healing is possible, that descent does not mean defeat, that darkness can become the cradle of awakening. Your story becomes their mirror. Let us return, then, to the language of dreams. Imagine a man who dreams. He stands upon the shore of a vast ocean at night. The waves crash violently, and he trembles with fear, knowing that one step too far could sweep him away. The sky is dark, the wind sharp, and every sound echoes the warning of destruction. But then he notices something extraordinary. The water glows faintly, illuminated from within, as if the stars themselves have descended into the sea. Driven by something he cannot name, he steps into the water, expecting to drown. Yet instead of sinking, he floats. The waves that once seemed hostile now hold him gently. He is carried not by fear, but by light. And as he awakens, tears fill his eyes. He knows in the deepest part of his being that the very thing he feared, the ocean that threatened to destroy him, has become the element that saved him. This is the essence of your transformation. What once threatened to annihilate you has become the force that sustains you. The narcissist's darkness, though destructive and merciless, pushed you into the ocean of the unconscious, into depths you would never have dared to explore on your own. And there, in that descent, you discovered something extraordinary. You could float. You could endure. You were never alone. The self, it was carrying you all along, quietly, patiently, waiting for you to trust its current. survival has revealed to you a profound truth. The psyche is larger than any single wound, and the soul contains depths far greater than you had ever imagined. Pain did not destroy you, it revealed you. And so, who have you become? You have become one who trusts the depths. You no longer fear the dark, for you know it is the womb of light. You no longer fear suffering, for you understand it as the forge where meaning is born. You no longer fear betrayal, for even betrayal cannot destroy the soul's mysterious power to remake itself. You live now with a different rhythm, a deeper gravity. You no longer rush to fix, to please, to rescue, or to dissolve into the needs of others. Instead, you stand rooted in yourself, calm, centered, and aware. From that rootedness flows a new kind of compassion. It is not the compulsive compassion of the old empath who gave to avoid rejection or pain. It is the steady, deliberate compassion of the awakened soul who gives freely because they choose to, not because they must. This, finally, is freedom. The quiet, radiant fruit of individuation. It is not loud, nor is it dramatic. It simply is. A peace that comes from knowing who you are, from embracing both your shadow and your light, from walking the world no longer bound by illusion, but guided by truth.